Congratulations to the team at 10 Lessons Learned. Awesome job, guys, on 150 episodes to date. More than 150,000 downloads, audio and video alone. Great job. Keep remembering, lessons are there always to be learned. Gather your strongest team around you and trust them with the job to do, and accept risk. Without risk, we'll never be able to tackle the hard jobs. We will never soar as a team, and we will never grow or learn. Enjoy.
Hello, and welcome to 10 Lessons Learned, the podcast where we talk to leaders, experts, and extraordinary people doing extraordinary things from around the world to uncover the lessons that shape their careers, businesses, and lives. Our goal is simple: to make the world a little wiser, one lesson at a time. Today, we have a very special episode as we are celebrating our 150th episode. Well, it wouldn't be much of a celebration without hearing from some of our previous guests. So with that being said, take a look at some of these clips.
Well, 150 episodes of 10 Lessons Learned. Now, that's quite an achievement. That's 1,500 gems of wisdom which have been shared and absorbed by viewers and listeners around the world. So a hearty congratulations to the team at 10 Lessons Learned and to the 150 or so contributors so far. I look forward to seeing and hearing many, many more of these episodes in future.
The team at 10 Lessons Learned, congratulations on hitting the milestone of 150 episodes. That is an amazing feat. I think that these are great lessons for up-and-coming managers and leaders, and really for anybody. I know that it was a tremendous amount of fun working with Robert Hossary, recording our episode together. It's a great opportunity for people to share the wisdom and lessons that they've learned in life with others, and I think a tremendous resource. I know I use it with my students here at Clarkson University. Again, congratulations on the 150th episode, and I very much look forward to the next 150 as well. Best of luck.
Congratulations to our favorite podcast for reaching episode 150. This is Joy from Greece, and since I was a guest at the show, I actually do have an extra lesson to share, and this is: go where they treat you the best. Go where they want you the most, where they celebrate you. Don't go where they take your time for granted and where they treat you like you're not good enough. Life's already too difficult, and no reason to find people or situations that make it even more difficult for us. Take care of yourselves. Love you.
Congratulations on 150 episodes of 10 Lessons Learned. What an amazing accomplishment. Thank you for all that you do and continue to provide that all-important, wonderful content. Congratulations.
Over the years, we've had a series of interesting guests with abundant amounts of wisdom. For this episode, we decided to flip the tide and turn the camera on the cast that makes the whole thing possible in the first place. Among the team, we have collectively over 100 years of experience, leading to many life lessons that we want to share. My name's Cody Como, and I will be your host today. Generally, I'm behind the camera, but today I'm going to be hosting our episode. I myself have had quite the career, even in my young life, where I've worked in many different industries, including engineering and management, entertainment, education, and a few startups along the way. Currently working in sales. Now I will introduce our guests and allow them a brief chance to introduce themselves, starting with Robert Hossary.
Hi, everyone. You obviously know my name. Been producing this with this wonderful team for the last 5 years. I've worked all around the world. I've managed businesses, started businesses, been territory manager, blah, blah, blah. But most importantly, I'm a father, a husband, and I'm just friends with these incredible people you're about to meet.
Thanks, Robert. Glad to have you joining us today. And next, we'll have Siebe Vanderzee.
Thank you, Cody. I have the easy name, as you can tell. Originally from Europe, from the Netherlands, living in the United States. I've had the opportunity to actually live in 4 countries on 3 continents and learned a lot about human behavior. And what I really like about our podcast, 10 Lessons Learned, is the fact that over time, we are all on the same mission. We want to talk to interesting people about their interesting experience and share that with our listeners truly all over the world. And that has been very successful. We started out when COVID started. There was not much we could do. And here we are 5 years later with 150 episodes. and we're still going. And we know our guests, they appreciate what we're doing, and we know that our listeners appreciate what we're doing. So we keep going, we keep doing what we're doing, and it's a real pleasure to be part of this team. Thank you.
Thanks, Siebe. So next we have the lovely Diana White.
Hello, everybody. Diana White. I've been with the show for a little over 2 years, almost 3 years, maybe. I started as a guest and fell in love with the concept. And Robert was kind enough to say, okay, kid, let's see what you got. And I am happy to say, still going strong, still interviewing, finding amazing people to talk about their lessons that they've learned in life. And I, too, consider myself lucky to be a part of this crew.
Well, we're lucky to have you, Diana. Next, we have Jeffrey Wang.
Hi, listeners. Jeffrey Wang here. I'm the founder of the Professional Doing Forum. I worked in IT sales for over 20 years, lived in 3 different countries over my lifetime, and absolutely enjoying being part of this international team where I get to meet some absolutely extraordinary people. Absolutely love the fact that our team comes from all over the world, and I'm personally learning so much from this experience. So really, really glad to be part of this project. 4 years going on 5, and still going strong.
Thanks, Jeffrey. Glad to hear from you. And finally, we have our Master of Marketing, Yi Wang.
Thanks, Cody. Yes, my name is Yi. I'm sometimes being considered the lost twin of Jeffrey at birth, but we're not related. We're not even in the same city. But yes, I do look after the marketing side of things of this team, an incredible team. It's been a couple of years. I absolutely enjoy every single minute of us working on the show, making the show possible, promoting it, and helping our guests to, amplify their messages to as far and wide as possible to the world. And our listeners are really enjoying the content as well. So, that's what I'm getting the kick out of it, as much as I'm, receiving and digesting all the wisdom that we hear from our guests. Thank you.
Thanks, E. Glad to have you on the team. And, all of the stuff you see online, you can thank him and all his hard work. So with that being said, and introducing our guests, we're going to get jumping into the conversation. Today's episode is going to be a little bit more relaxed, and we're going to just hear from our guests and hear some of the wisdom that they have, and hopefully you'll all take something away with it. With that being said, I would love to kick this off and ask Diana a question here, since we do have a lot of listeners who are entrepreneurs and looking to either expand their business or start businesses. I would love to hear from you. Since you've had a lot of experience in startups and being a mentor for young entrepreneurs, I know, at least personally, I didn't know what I wanted to do in life or what I wanted to do. And I knew someday I wanted to be my own boss. What should I do? What is the first starting point of starting your business? What are the steps? How can I get started?
Get therapy. No, I'm just kidding. First step, I think, Cody, it's a very good question. I feel like being an entrepreneur has now become a part of almost the American dream lexicon, right? But we always seem to do it backwards. I speak to a lot of founders, and they will say something to the effect of, I wasn't making enough money at my 9 to 5. I decided that I wanted to work for myself to make more money. I felt like I could do a better job and not have that oversight. I wanted to be my own boss. Some people will say, well, we needed extra money. There was no way we could make ends meet, so I started this business. And really what you should do is, if you're thinking about starting a business and you want it to have longevity, you want it to have sustainability, you need to think about what that business is going to be, what the growth strategy is going to be, what the startup costs are going to be. You need to do all your research about your market, your target market, and then you need to save. You need to save money. Starting businesses costs money. In the entrepreneurial world, you'll often hear that we say you are starting a baby. You're having a baby. That's your business. And as a consultant, you never tell somebody that their baby's ugly.
We never do that, right? So every business is great, but there may be more work that needs to be done in one business than another. But the key is to figure out where do I want this to go and what resources do I need, including monetary resources, to put my best foot forward before I start the business. And that's the best advice that I would give someone. Do your research and save your money, get your right resources, and then go for it.
Could I just interrupt, Diana? When you say resources, are you also meaning make sure you have a brains trust, a mentor, someone that you can bounce ideas off? Because entrepreneurs listening, you're not geniuses. You don't know everything.
Yeah, Robert, I absolutely agree. And I would say, not necessarily that they're not geniuses. You're always the smartest person in the room when it's your idea, right? But what I would say is you don't have to do it alone. So resources means money. It means mentors. It means advisors who have been in that industry before, perhaps. It means accountants, bookkeepers, anybody, marketing, anybody that you can think of that you're going to need to help you make that business successful. Start engaging them before you even start the business to see what they have to say.
Thanks, Anna. There's definitely some useful information there. And, if I was a young entrepreneur, if I was looking to get this information, what would be the best way to do that? Should that be connecting with people who are in the industry? Would that be doing research on Google or reading a book? Where should I begin that research process?
All of the above. I would say definitely start researching, reading. Reading is so important. I'm not going to go with the cliche of reading is fundamental, but it really is important. You need to read about whatever gaps you think you have. If your gap is, I don't know about the financing, then you need to read finance books, right? If your gap is, I don't know how to lead and I want to bring on a team, you need to read about that. I would also highly recommend you join a club, a group, a LinkedIn group that represents the industry that you're trying to break into. That is critical to be around your peers. And then if you happen to still be in school, whether that be undergrad or grad, because we all know that people are starting businesses younger and younger, use your educational resources around you, use your professors, use your career counselors, use anybody that you can think of. And if you're thinking about starting a business in an industry that isn't necessarily your major, which can happen, then go over to that school of X and start talking to those professors and those people and see if they can help you, right? But it really is all about creating your network. And that starts with you getting out into that community and engaging.
Thanks, Diana. Yeah, I'm so glad you brought up network because that actually brings up my next question, which I have for Yi here, who does a lot with marketing and expanding our network. And, at the end of the day, we know, especially in the digital age, it's all about network, all about connections and growing that. So Yi, what I'd love to know now is how should one really go about growing that network? How can somebody utilize the digital age and the tools out there? Who should be in it? I know we were talking about, mentors and stuff, but how should we really target that network? How can we really get in touch with the people that should be there?
Yeah, look, Cody, I might just add something on the point that Diana made. I think I've actually heard lots of stories of successful entrepreneurs looking back in their life at the beginning of their journey, and they attribute much of their success to the fact that they were really oblivious to the challenges that they were about to face at the time, right? So as much as I totally agree with what Diana said in terms of preparation, getting yourself out there, testing the water, testing your ideas. I'll get to the networking side of it very quickly. I think a lot of times, you got to respect your passion. You got to respect your gut feel. Sometimes you just have to go with it. And that itself, I don't have that experience myself, but I've heard enough from successful entrepreneurs that they think sometimes, that lack of preparation, so to say, or lack of understanding of the challenges that they face ahead can actually drive them forward. On the networking, I think Diana's point is very, 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 very valuable. Whether it's entrepreneurs or young kids these days going through schools and entering workforce, networking is the must-haves. And also, during COVID, or now we're coming out of the COVID, in-person networking is the best. So what I'm really trying to say is that if you have an idea, if you want to get your ideas out there, you have to apply the Silicon Valley way of thinking about failing fast, is that you should not hold on to that idea to yourself, but share that idea with as many people as possible and really test it out. Really figure out that your idea has a market, has a need, has a demand. Because if that's not there, it's just a good idea in your head, you're going to face all sorts of challenges going forward. And I'll sort of channel a bit of Professor Scott Galloway's talking about the challenges that young men these days face, is that, during COVID, we all get used to logging remotely, not really thinking about, how you interact with people in person, how you should have the basic etiquette of interactions in person. A lot of young kids really need to think about, how to get back into the workforce, into the proximate distance of the people that really makes a difference in your life, whether it's at work or in life, and then be in their face and showcase the best of you. And I think that's the most important way of networking. The online side of things, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, I think all the young people are very, very familiar with those, and I've got nothing else to offer.
I would say really
I think
quickly, Cody, Yi spot on. I would say though, the Silicon Valley way, I really want our viewers and listeners to be careful and make sure you get that village around you, and specifically one part of that village, someone who is well-versed in IP and copyright protection. Before you start talking to everyone about your idea, you want to make sure that anything that needs to be protected is protected. But I do agree with Yi. Sometimes planning can cause analysis paralysis, and sometimes you just need to do it. But do it in the right way possible and protect whatever you can protect.
Terrific. Yeah, definitely some great points there, and I'm hearing there's a real common theme here of, not just relationships and making sure that you can build those connections, build that network, but making sure that you're prepared to do so, that you do the research, much like you were saying before, Diana, and that you are prepared and understand the risks so you can make those educated decisions rather than going in blindly. And kind of keeping on that theme, when we talk about relationships, I know, Robert, one of your top signature phrases is relationships are everything. And we've talked a lot about it during our own meetings here. With that being said, can you kind of emphasize that importance of relationships, whether it's getting started in business, whether it's already established, ultimately, what kind of value do you really get for them, and how can you foster them?
Well, I think Yi touched on it when he said that you have to learn the etiquette. And I'm not talking about the finishing school etiquette. It's just when you go to a networking function, you need to understand how to read the room, how to present yourself, what to say, how not to be a dick is basically what I'm saying. And it's very easy. It's very easy to come across brash, and that will destroy your relationship. That will destroy the opportunity to create a relationship. So learning that etiquette first up by going and observing. I'm not going to say there's books. There's plenty of books to read. We actually had Robin Henderson, who was a guest on the show about a year ago, maybe 2 years ago. She's the networking guru of the Southern Hemisphere. She's got a lot of books out there. There are books on how to network, but I don't think there's a better teacher than yourself by going and observing. I think that will show you who is successful, what to do, what not to do. But networking and building that network is incredibly important. it's important that you are trusted. And this is the theme. Nobody's going to do business with you if they don't trust you. And you've got, I don't care what industry you're all in, we're all salespeople. The six of us here are all salespeople, whichever way you look at it, no matter what we do. And the essence of being a sales professional is earning and gaining that trust from your client. And the same thing goes for networking and your peers, the people you work with, your team. Trust is everything. And that's what you've got to do when you're building that network. You want people to think about you when they come across an opportunity that they can't deal with, but they know you can. And my entire career has been that. I have had so many referrals from colleagues, even in opposition companies, competitor companies, who say, well, we can't do that, but Rob can. And I've done the same for them. So networking and building that relationship is crucially important in every part of your life, not just business. It's crucially important that your partner trusts you. Crucially important your children trust you. Everybody will build a relationship around trust. And that is the most important thing that I see. And here is something I picked up when I finished with the American Chamber of Commerce. All these so-called network that I had, many of them disappeared because I could no longer be of service to them.
Yeah.
Don't forget that, people, that while someone is your friend, when you can be useful to them, you'll soon see that they'll disappear when you can serve no more purpose for them, no use for them. So be aware of that aspect as well. Don't let it tarnish your relationship. It is what it is. So accept the fact that there are going to be people in your network that are only going to be there for how much you can be of use to them. And Diana's nodding her head vigorously because Diana knows what I'm saying. Siebe and Jeff and Yi all know what I'm
Been
saying.
there. Yes.
So, yeah.
Robert, what you were saying, of course, you have a network and suddenly it's gone. The Chuckism there is, with all due respect, look at me as your funeral director. Sooner or later, you're going to need me. I see that in so many situations with people that I was working with and friends and keeping track, and suddenly it disappears. And it was, again, my old boss, Chuck, who phrased it, and it stuck with me more than 20 years, and it still applies, as we all know. You have to be aware that, in a way, friendship consists of different layers. You have people that are truly very close to you, and family typically falls into that category. And they are, let's say, friends for life. And then there are other great relationships, people you work with sometimes for years, but that may change over time because they move, you move, whatever. So just wanted to add that.
No, I think that's a very important point that we all, and I'm sure all of us have made the mistake of considering a business partner a friend. So just be aware of that. That's an excellent point, Siebe.
Appreciate the insight there. And you guys did touch on a couple interesting points, and perhaps Robert and Siebe, you'd care to answer this follow-up here. But obviously, no surprise here, I'm coming from a younger generation, one that unfortunately does have a bit of a negative stigma around it, whether we're lazy or maybe we're not reliable, not trustworthy. There's a whole series of things that are kind of negative about the younger generation coming into the workforce. So how can we fight against that sort of image that we have? Because there were, some statistics coming out saying that, there's a bit of hesitancy in hiring people in younger generations for various reasons, but without, diving too deep in the sake of time, I'd love to hear from you guys and in terms of how can the younger generation present ourselves better? How can we foster those relationships? How can we, maybe go against that stigma?
My first concept, as I know you all are aware, is get over it. It is such an important concept in everything, because when you are going through that job search, applying, it's very emotional. I've been doing this for 30 years and I still respect what people go through. I'm not saying, oh, don't worry about it. And when I say get over it, I don't mean it's not a big deal. It is a big deal, but it is so important that you do not, here I go again, create mental barriers, that you get yourself ahead of that. Because if you start anticipating of what is lacking, what goes wrong, no. And I know, Cody, that perhaps in a little bit you want to talk specifically about job search. I can get into that right now, but it's very important that people have self-confidence. Confidence for all of us, and definitely if you are in a job search and you are early in your career, it's tough because you don't know. You haven't been around for so many years. You cannot say, oh, I have 20 years of experience. But that confidence is something that is a mental aspect. And if you think of whatever, playing sports, you want to win the game and you may not be the national champion, but that level of confidence, it could be related to artwork, it could be related to writing. Confidence is very important. And that's not just turning on the switch and now you're fine, but building that up. And I think that's an important element. And again, perhaps in a little bit, I can get into more detail when it comes to a job search and those aspects there.
Confidence is absolutely the key. And again, I get frustrated when I hear things like that because I personally don't see the younger generation as, not worthy. I see them being held back because old farts think that this is the way we've always done it and won't change their way, won't update their processes, their systems, their way of thinking. So it really frustrates me. But confidence, Siebe is spot on.
So from my point of view, I'd just like to offer a slightly different perspective. Obviously thinking back, in my younger days, were we all that different to the young people today? I think we need to acknowledge that that tension's always going to be there, that it's going to be constantly there. When we were younger, we thought we had good ideas, new ideas to bring to the table, and people set in their ways kind of stopped us there. Now, obviously, as we get older and learn through experience, through setbacks in life, you realize there's probably a very good reason why things were done the way that they were, but we didn't have the wisdom to appreciate at the time. So I guess as a young person growing up, you got to appreciate how much of that is just the way things are as you learn and mature and gain wisdom and life experience through your life, and how much of that is, you being to getting ahead of yourself, whether you have a sense of entitlement. I mean, there are structural issues, don't get me started, that I believe are probably stacked in against the favor, against the younger generations. However, certain things don't change over time. And we should be able to see the things that are within our control and learn and grow from that. But one thing I'll sort of go on, and this is speaking to a lot of our guests, is that certain wisdoms are age old and it never changes. And I think hopefully through the show, we can explore a lot of these age old wisdoms that will never change over time, despite, sort of what generation you belong to.
Thanks. Yeah, definitely quite a bit of information there. And obviously that conversation itself could be hours long in its own right. Thanks for joining us in our very special celebration of the 150th episode. I want to take a moment and thank all of our guests who have been a part of the show. Here's some thanks that they've given us.
Hi, this is Eric Miller, and I want to congratulate 10 Lessons Learned on 150 episodes. Great show, so much to learn, fantastic stuff. Congrats.
150 episodes. What? Congratulations, 10 Lessons Learned, Diana White, and the whole team. It is an honor to be part of your community.
I'm Terry Tucker, founder of Motivational Check LLC, and a previous guest on the 10 Lessons Learned podcast. I wanted to congratulate Siebe and the 10 Lessons Learned team on the meaningful milestone of producing their 150th episode of the show. Your listeners benefit from your unmatched insight, knowledge, and wisdom. I wish you continued success and look forward to the next 150 podcasts you produce.
Hi, Ron Higgs here, and look who I found. I found Diana White, the host of my favorite podcast of the world, 10 Lessons Learned, and she told me that this is the anniversary of your what?
150 episodes.
150 episodes. Well, congratulations, Diana. I hope, well, I guess 10 lessons are done, so you can't have them done anymore. Congratulations to this day. I've been on several podcasts, and yours is my favorite.
And you can always come back with new lessons.
Oh, really? Cool. All right. See you, everyone.
Bye.
I want to congratulate 10 Lessons Learned on its 150th podcast. I was delighted to be among one of the first 100 podcasters, and it just goes to show that lifelong learning is an important journey that we all deserve to be on. Thank you very much, and good luck for the next 150.
Listeners, this is Steve from the Arizona Technology Council. Congratulations on reaching 150 episodes. It was an honor to be a guest and share my journey with you. A key leadership lesson I've embraced is the power of resilience. In the face of challenges, staying resilient allows us to learn, adapt, and ultimately lead with greater impact. Here's to continued success and more episodes of inspiring learning. Keep leading, keep learning. Cheers. Thank you.
And I would question, again, just for a general discussion, what are your thoughts on that? Because if a young person comes in and sees something that could be maybe more efficient or something that could be done differently, and maybe it was so obvious that it just seemed like it wouldn't make sense, but how can they kind of hold their own? Or again, tying back to that previous discussion.
So I think, part of the systemic problem with that is that older people don't want to be wrong. Older people don't want to be.
I don't agree with that at all.
See what I'm saying?
I'm never wrong.
Point taken. So older people, especially if you've been in leadership for a very long time, you do think you know everything, you think you've seen everything, and you just want the team to perform. You want results. You don't necessarily want pushback or collaboration. And I think when you come across leaders like that, which unfortunately they are more in abundance than your traditional servant leader, it's a hard time for a younger person to come into the organization and say, hey, I know you've been doing it this way for the past 35 years, but I have something new. I don't trust it. I don't trust it, especially if it's AI. I don't trust it. No, we're not going to use it. I've had bosses tell me, we're not changing, not in my tenure. We're not going to do it. Not just because they don't like change, not because what we're suggesting is not better. And so the base piece of advice I would give is learn your leader. Learn your leader, learn their style, learn their lines in the sand, have conversations with them. How can I contribute? Because I do have ideas. And listen to what they tell you. If they tell you this is how you can contribute, try it. But understand that everybody's different, and a lot of people run off of fear of obsolescence and ego.
Especially when you get to a certain stage in life, because ageism is real in recruitment, and Siebe could talk about that. But that fear of obsolescence and how am I going to support myself, my family, if I don't have a job, and I'm never going to get a job at this pay rate at my age, there's a lot of fear there. So when a young buck comes up and has a better idea, and generally they are better, yeah, the fear is there. But as Diana said, if you learn how to communicate to your leader, you will find a way to change their mind and go with your suggestion.
I'm going to say, and if you find that you can't, then that's the universe telling you that perhaps there is another opportunity out there and another boss that will listen. That's
Yeah.
all I will say about that. Don't beat your
Get
head
over
up
it,
against a
stay
brick
back.
wall.
Well,
Sorry,
I
Siebe.
think it sounds good for many people, and maybe I want to say for most people. It doesn't apply to all people.
No.
There are individuals that do their thing their way, no matter who their boss is, no matter what the organization dictates. This is how we do it, therefore you have to do it that way. And I guess I was one of those people myself early in my career. And we need to do another recording to use the whole list of situations where I spoke against whoever was in charge. And I'm not saying, and Robert, you make a very good point. Of course, you have to think of the team, the organization, but there can be issues of specific value to an individual, to him, to her, where you say, that's just not acceptable. And I realize the risk that you take. And we talked about this, right? Because if you get fired, it has an impact on your family. And especially when there are children involved, you don't want to put them in that situation. And yet there are situations where you say, you know what? This is such an extreme situation that I'm dealing with. Even if it's only between your ears, it doesn't mean that everybody has to agree with you. And I have to admit, I'm still one of those people that will get myself in trouble if that's the result, but I will open my mouth and I will give my opinion.
Viewers and listeners, I need to put out there that he is absolutely correct in what he says, but he also decided to start his own business because he didn't want to have to deal with that other stuff.
Well,
so
and that was my next point. I'm kidding. I started my own business, which gave me a certain level of independence, but you're still dealing with clients and other people. I've also learned, and it goes back to what was mentioned earlier, over time, you put things perhaps in a better perspective. When I was young, early 20s, hey, my opinion, here we go. Today, let's see how it plays out. And yes, I'm still willing to jump in. There's a little bit more balance, I hope. But that inner feeling doesn't go away, not in my head. And okay, I had a great job. I lost the job. I don't care. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think the
100%.
younger generation, sorry, Cody, I think needs to appreciate the concept of patience and slowing down a little bit more. I know we're going like 100 miles an hour these days with everything that we do. And the demand is such that we have to see result instantly these days. It's a fact of life these days now. But those age-old, timeless wisdom in terms of, curb your enthusiasm, appreciate delayed gratification, prioritize what can give you the biggest outcome. Those sort of things.
Enjoy the journey.
Yeah. I mean, if I'm to convince my wife, I need to take, 2 days, 3 days a week to come, to get a concept across. Like you don't just change things straight away. Just be patient. Show your results, work on something. If you can demonstrate value, it's very hard to argue against.
Picking up from that, look, I think part of the challenges for our listeners is to separate what's the age-old wisdom, human nature and, the downfalls, the growth, the journey, what makes us tick. A lot of these things are timeless and it doesn't change. However, there are other things that we have to observe because what I'm observing is that the changes in the world is speeding up as we speak. There's very good reason why people, older generation, do things a certain way because, maybe for the past 35, 40, even 50 years, things have done exactly the same way. The underlying principles are exactly the same and it's worked exactly the same. But what they don't always appreciate is that there are underlying assumptions that have fundamentally changed. Diana mentioned the word AI or artificial intelligence. That to me is a neutral bomb. That has as much implications in how we work going forward as the invention of the internet itself. And, clearly the invention of the internet changed a lot. But, if you look at recent years, COVID lockdowns has absolutely changed fundamentally how we work and relate to each other. All I can say is that the way the world works is it's changing at a rate that is speeding up, and it's hard for me sometimes to even understand the implications. Now, when I was younger, I can look at a new technology, I get excited about it, I know exactly what it means and how it changes the world. And then as you get older, you realize that I'm struggling to even comprehend how something's going to change the world. I mean, I can tell you that all we're seeing with AI right now is the tip of the iceberg. Most of us don't even know how this is going to change the world going forward.
Jeffrey, interesting point, of course, but I think the world has always been changing. If I think about where I am today in Arizona in the beautiful desert, 100 years ago, I would be riding my horse and wagon, and gee, we got vehicles, cars. Well, we have to build roads. Well, roads, we have freeways, we have airplanes, we have spacecrafts, flying cars. Oh, there goes my neighbor. I mean, it will continue to change. And I think, indeed, as human beings, we have a tendency to feel comfortable, to be stuck in this is the way we do it. And now what? Robert, Y2K, remember in the 1990s that we were all concerned about, my gosh, the year
Airplanes
2000
are going to
is
fall
around.
out of the sky.
Exactly. And now we kind of laugh at it, right? And rightly so. So,
Siebe, you're spot on. You're absolutely correct. The difference, however, between the world we grew up in and the world today is the speed of that change.
but I agree. I definitely agree with that. But that's part of change. And this time or now it's going faster. So
Much.
But if you think about, again, going back to whatever, the Roman Empire or pick any time era, things have changed and people have to adjust to change. And we are not necessarily born to be dealing with change. We are comfortable. Culture is formed by the way we grow up. And as we, learn more, we extend our culture. If you think of several parts of the world that over hundreds of years have changed, new countries, new names. Well, the land, the ocean is still the same. That hasn't changed, but we give it a different name. And so, yes, it is a challenge. I'm not saying, don't worry about it, but it's normal. And Jeffrey, going back to your point, and you're into, emerging technologies like perhaps no one else here. Yeah, it's worrisome to a certain extent or to a great extent, but I think life has been like that always, and it's okay. Now we are connected to people all over the world. We have information, right on the spot from whatever country you name. That's very different, but it's okay. We'll be fine. We'll come up with solutions.
But so Siebe, just to that point though, don't you think that the pace of change and the technology advances have fundamentally changed the way we relate to each other? So I'll give you an example. The advent of the internet means that we can now find people all around the world the same way we found each other, actually, and be connected to people who shares your passions and interests.
Yeah.
Right. So it's incredible what that means in terms of people who might have a different perspective on ideas, but on the same token, it's easier than ever to avoid people you don't want to deal with because you can now find alternatives. Now, it was, back in the days, it was true that if there's only one person that could be a supply to you in the town, doesn't matter whether you like them or hate them, you have to use them. But nowadays, it's easier than ever. Pop on Amazon, go on Alibaba or whatever it is, and find exactly what is what you're looking for. And be able to not have to deal with anyone. So I would even argue that it is more important than ever to have the right reputation, to be able to build that connection, to be able to have the right relationships out there than before that digital age. And I'd argue that it's harder and harder to get away with bad behavior than it used to be. Because of the advance of technology, for example. So just understanding that, which should have a profound implication in how we behave as a person.
Yeah, I mean, you're making a good point. I just think it's normal, even if we don't know. I think that aspect is normal. We don't know. We can explain what happened yesterday, to a certain extent, perhaps, but we don't know what's going to happen in the next 12, 24 hours, next hour, right? And that, I think, has always been the same. And yes, the contents of what we're talking about today with technology, communication all over the world, yes, that's different. But I think that as a human being, we have to accept the fact that we are evolving and that we are not sure about what's going to happen next. That's okay. At least if it's okay, then you can live your life without issues. And for some people, yes, they will get very nervous, upset. And we all know the danger AI can bring to anyone, right? And yet, I think it's part of human life that things change. They will continue to change, and we have to adjust. We cannot expect to say, oh, let's forget about this available technology because it worries me. No, it's here.
And
anyway,
there's an interesting point to be added to that where, I mean, there's tons of platitudes there where we say, the only constant is change. Well, obviously, technology is a massive area there where it poses tons of possibilities, but also tons of threats when we talk about the interconnectedness of being able to find people online, but also you have the risks that come with that. And so when your horizon is expanded that much more, it does allow for a lot more possibility, right? I think back to Moore's law, which, for listeners who may not be too familiar, the simple explanation is basically the time of which technology takes to double. So, if we're talking, let's just say 1860s, where we had the American Civil War, there was still a lot of muskets and cannons and horses and carriages, things like that. A short 20 years later, we had the Industrial Revolution. That's one lifetime. That's just, the age of being born to buying your first beer. And we went from that to having textiles and manufacturing. You take another 20 years after that, and you're hitting 1900, where now all of a sudden you start to deal with trade agreements and a lot more expansionism. And 20 more years after that, you have the automobile, where the Model T, it's the innovations change, but we're a long ways from there, from the 1800s, 1880s, where the Industrial Revolution started, to now. The speed, and this is tying back to what you were saying before and what Robert was saying, the speed of which changes. So compared to older generations, in my generation, Moore's law, or these changes and how quick things are doubling and how quick technology is innovation, there's so much possibility and risk to it. And that's actually, Jeff, why I wanted to pick your brain a little bit more on, as sort of the resident technology connoisseur, so to speak, is I would love to just kind of know, we're talking about change. Change is inevitable. We know what's going to happen. Technology is probably the most recognized example of this. But what kind of trends are we seeing? What kind of risks are coming up with that? How can we be proactive for the future and being prepared, but also utilizing it to our advantages with avoiding those risks?
So that's a really good question, Cody. And yeah, I don't think it's something that could be answered within the length of this episode. But look, at a high level, I think you made a really good point there. Just the speed of change. I was reading the other day. It's like 60 years between when the Wright brothers took the first flight to when we landed on the moon. I mean, that is something that blows your mind. 60 years is within somebody's lifetime. But at the same token, it's been 60 years since then, and the kind of things that we've seen since then. We're mentioning AI because that's the hot topic at this moment in time, But then we've had these technologies. You mentioned the iPhone, the smartphone revolution, the fact that we can get all the information at our fingertips now, which has a profound impact on human nature. The fact that we are now no longer able to delay gratification. The fact that we're addicted to dopamine, and this is not just kids growing up with it. And you're absolutely right that kids that grew up in this generation, probably some of them don't even have a chance at not having that in their lives. So is it good or bad? And as Siebe was pointing out, I wish I was as optimistic as Siebe, but I do think that it does come with a profound threat. So in terms of technology, the biggest one I can see right now, it is AI, and probably not afraid of AI in the same way that most people are. Now, I see AI as people taking cognitive shortcuts, right? So, people used to watch the news and believe everything they read and hear on the news, and that's a good cognitive shortcut because the news used to have certain levels of rigor behind it. But, as the internet age happened, the media landscape fundamentally changed, and the news is no longer the news. They're there to attract clicks and eyeballs. The fact is, if you look at all the statistics, life has been better on Earth than ever before. The fact that more people are out of poverty, the fact that we have more access to information in our pockets than anybody on Earth, including the Rockefellers back in the turn of the century, right? So life is good in an objective point of view, but the thing is that's not the only measure of life, right? Like the fact is, how happy, how fulfilled, how content are people. The point I was trying to make with the technology is that whatever good or bad or ugly, that technology could supercharge it. Now, if in the 1930s, the Third Reich had access to the technology that we have today, could the world be a far worse place? And we the horrors that we could imagine, what they've committed on the world if they had that technology. And so it's something that whenever we're inventing technology, yes, it's good to be optimistic about what it could do, but there's also a dark side because human nature never changes. The failings that we have as human beings in how we use that technology will ultimately determine whether the technology has a chance to shape the course of human history, right? So we need to approach all things and understand that, sort of with great power comes great responsibility, not to invoke Spider-Man, but that's the approach we have to look at technology.
Interesting. Yeah, I love the conversation that's kind of coming from it. It almost does take a bit of a philosophical stance where infinite possibilities can lead to good, bad, different outcomes. And again, as we've said before, that could be a whole episode and then some. That could be a whole series in its own way, talking about technologies and the dangers and stuff that come with it. And so, what I would love to hear too is, I kind of want to just take a step back here, and we talked a lot with technology, but I want to refer to a point that Siebe had made earlier on, because we talk a lot about change and being in the workplace, and sometimes it's accepted, sometimes it's not. Sometimes people are doing the right thing, the wrong thing. Sometimes people don't always accept the change there, and there is, and please take the humor in this. There is a sort of a stereotype around the Dutch famously saying that they do not sugarcoat it. They will tell you exactly how they feel about you one way or the other. And I do have a couple friends who are from the Netherlands that I went to college with, and they would tell me the same thing. But I know, Siebe, you've also talked with us about a lot of personal life examples where, you've spoken your mind or stood up for something that you believe is right to some degree where, there was conflict. But ultimately, at the end of the day, you stood up for what you believed, right? And you were able to hold your own. So what I want to really know is, can we dive deeper into why maybe in a professional point, sometimes it's daunting when you're going to go and talk to a boss. You might not always feel comfortable being able to stand your own or feel like you have the power to do it. Why is it important that you actually go ahead and hold your ground, or maybe bring up something that could be wrong or morally, or, kind of the maybe even the risks that come with doing that, but the benefit that comes with it also.
So, Cody, why do you keep saying that Dutch people are direct? And do you have a problem with that?
I think it's great, personally. I would say it comes from, you, first of all, but also coming from a few, as I said, a few friends of mine from Netherlands.
I'm sorry, but I actually think it's absolute nonsense to say that Dutch people are direct.
Really? Okay.
I'm so glad I see some smiling faces. And I mean that sincerely. I mean that sincerely. And Cody, you're my friend, of course, we're teammates. I saw that question coming, so I decided to react in a Dutch way. And again, I apologize because I know I've learned over time that I have to turn it down, a little bit sometimes. And yes, it's true. Dutch people are direct, and I would like to say they say it because they want to be straightforward. And family members explain to me how stupid I am. That's because they're trying to help me. And so if you live in that environment, and by the way, I don't know if that's still a name people recognize, but an American anthropologist and researcher, Edward T. Hall, he wrote about countries with a low context or a high context. And the way people communicate, sometimes meaning is derived not from what's being said, but from behavior. And in the Netherlands, and there are other countries, it's a low context country. We like to tell people what we think, as I said before, because we want to be helpful in that respect. And it is direct. It has gotten me into quite a bit of trouble. But with that, you learn over time. And I also, as you know, served in a diplomatic role. And then even more, you have to control what you say, how you say it. But that inner thought is always there. And it comes up, very quickly when I think about something. But then, okay, I've learned over the years, let's turn it down. But I've been in quite a few situations where I spoke my mind. One I have to think of, I was part of a forum discussion at my old university, the Thunderbird School of Global Management. And students were in the room, and I was a graduate, so hey, it's one big family, everything was good. But they asked me a question: what would you do if you are working in an organization where you see something that is unethical? It's almost close to, Cody, what you were saying as far as what we're talking about. And my honest response was, based on experience, you have to say something, you have to speak up. Especially, and I was thinking of a situation I was in South America when I lived there, working in a bank. There were a number of things happening there that were, let's say, unethical. It was difficult for the employees there to speak up to management. I heard from them what was going on. I spoke up. And yes, it got me in trouble. I'll never forget one evening that one of the more senior employees from the bank came to my house. And this is many years ago, but he said, look, I want to make it clear that from the employees, we have your support. We appreciate what you said, what you've done. But if we open our mouth, we'll get fired. And this was in an economic environment where you don't want to get fired because you don't find a job, you're out. And it was a very helpful lesson for me because I wasn't suffering. Yeah, I got in trouble and okay, I can do it again. But realizing that not everybody is in a position to speak up and speak out. It doesn't mean they're cowards or whatever. It's just difficult. And I've noticed over time, over the years, that is something that is part of my personality. That if I see something, we had a situation here at the border with Mexico where they were separating children from their parents. Even today, I will not accept that. And I always say, they're not my children. I'm not responsible. But if it comes to those issues, I can guarantee you I will speak up. We all have part of our upbringing, part of what we experience in our own life. And to stand on that principle, it may be Dutch and say, hey, don't worry about it and don't offend that person and don't. No, if people cross the line, even if it's not my personal damage that's being done, I will stand up for that person. And it's not to say it's me, I think we all should do that. And I think it's very important to be aware of how many people are dealing with difficult situations, even though it's not me personally, they are in a difficult situation. And I can think of many examples, but I don't want to take over the podcast.
I do want to echo Siebe's comment there in that, I think fundamentally, and there's a ongoing theme with the podcast, what's right and wrong is age old. It's never going to change, and I believe that you should always try to do what you believe is right. Now, Siebe made a really good point, and, hats off to Siebe for having the courage to do so. And I wish I had the same courage, especially sort of younger earlier on in my own career, to be able to speak up. But I think what I've learned over the years is that it is important to speak up for what's right, or at least what you believe is right, even if you're wrong. And the more that people in the world do that, the better world we be living in. And it could be that both of us think that we're right and we disagree with each other, but the world becomes better when we're openly sort of examining each other's ideas based on what we believe. Now no one is the font of wisdom and no one's always right, but that ability to be open about what you believe is right is ultimately going to lead to a better result. And unfortunately, what I'm seeing in the world, and as Siebe mentioned, is that a lot of people are not in a position to speak up because they're afraid.
If I may, it's not only related to losing your job. When I think of the topic of diversity, and especially, let's say, women in many countries, they are not perceived as equal to men. That's not how I was raised. That's not, let's say, acceptable. On the other hand, there is little I can do to go to a certain country and say, oh, I'm going to change your system. And at the same time, it does help if we can show support, to use the example, for women, and obviously give them access to opportunities if we are in that position. And that is something that I hope for as the world communicates more with each other, become more aware because of the technology that we have, that we actually understand that as human beings, we are equal. We are all citizens of the world. My favorite phrase from Socrates, we are all citizens of the world. And that should hopefully help people to feel that they're equal and have access to opportunities. Again, I realize in many political situations in many countries, that's not a possibility, but that's what I hope for.
I have been in situations where, you wish it was an I am Spartacus moment, right? Where everybody stands up together. But I will tell you this, I've been in situations where people have come to me and said, Diana, we're miserable. We don't know what to do. I see it. And then I speak up and I go, hey, everybody's miserable. And then the person goes, everybody who? And I turn around and there's nobody behind me. And I was the sacrificial lamb, right? And so, I think it's important to have your morals and understand what your litmus is of what's right and what's wrong. But there are certain situations and there are certain people, Black women in particular, that we have to be very careful about the causes we pick up and the flags that we wave and the fights that we fight, because we end up being the scapegoat and we end up being labeled as the angry Black woman. Because when push comes to shove, the people that we were trying to fight for run. Right. So I think that's a very delicate situation to be in. And I think it's up to the person to figure out, one, if they have it in them to fight the fight, and if they can live with the consequences of them turning around and not seeing their army behind them.
Could I just wrap this up, Cody, with this thought? What I'm hearing from Diana, Siebe, and Jeff, I've boiled it down to one saying: live your values. If you can live and live up to the values that you hold dear, then it really, yes, understand the consequences, but your life is going to be so much smoother for yourself because you'll be proud of yourself and of your actions. Now, I may be wrong, but that's what I heard when I heard the three of you speak.
I think, if I may also very briefly, we have interviewed a number of guests who have shared their story with us. And they're unique, right, in their journeys through life, careers, etc. But again, Robert, to your point, they make the point for us as well. Their journey, their survival, their success, it was not automatic, it was not easy, it was not fair, it was ugly. And Diana, when I hear you talk, we know each other, it pains me to hear, and it's not new, but that there is that difference and how people are treated differently. And I think that's important for, I want to say the world, but sometimes you have to focus on certain countries to understand that that shouldn't happen. Easy for me to say, but that shouldn't happen.
There's definitely a lot here, with that. And that's why I particularly love that question and that kind of conversation, is because, again, it's a common theme with everything we've asked, that you could have, a whole series on diving deep into it.
I'd sort of like to offer a sort of interpretation. I echo what Rob is saying in terms of living your values, right? But I believe through, some of my own experiences and through talking to a lot of our guests, that the world is better for you having done what you did, Diana, even if it's unfair to you yourself, right? The reality is that you're making the world a better place by taking that principle stance, speaking up, doing what you believe is right. There's a saying that the world will be better when people plant trees that they know they won't be around to enjoy the shade. And the reality is that that's the way we've got to live our life. If we are to have an optimistic future, then we've got to be prepared to pay the price for doing what's right ourselves, knowing full well that we won't be there to enjoy the fruits of our labor. And to some extent, this is why we have to thank our forebearers, people like parents and grandparents, for doing what they have done so that we can enjoy the world that they have left behind. And so, knowing that, this is sort of our time to try and emulate what they have done in order to have an optimistic future, I guess. So that's sort of, zooming out in a much bigger sense. But, that's sort of the wisdom that we have distilled from speaking to a lot of our guests.
Appreciate that, Jeff, and coming in with, kind of wrapping it up with a nice little bow to the whole conversation. Similarly, as I said, plenty to go off of there for sure. Thanks again for joining us on a very special episode of 10 Lessons Learned. It goes without saying that once you come onto the podcast, you're part of the family, and wouldn't be a family gathering without having some people come together. We have some very special messages that came in from some of our favorite guests.
Hello, Robert and team. On the anniversary of your 150th episode of 10 Lessons Learned, just wanted to say it was amazing being a guest on your show. It was one of my favorite podcasts to really have to sit and think about the 10 lessons I've taken from life. So keep up the great work. I enjoy listening to all the episodes, and look forward to not only your 150th, but your 1,500th episode.
Hi there, I'm Barnaby Howarth. I just wanted to say congratulations to 10 Lessons Learned and Robert Hossary on your 150th episode of the podcast. It's a sensational achievement, and I was humbled to be a part of it. I was actually kind of intimidated when Robert asked me to come on, because he was such a big corporate high flyer. But it was really nice having a nice human chat. So thank you, Robert, and to the team at 10 Lessons Learned.
Wow, 150 episodes. Congratulations, Siebe, the entire 10 Lessons Learned team. I'm really proud of you. As a lessons learned, you always have to celebrate small and big milestones. Congrats.
I would like to congratulate 10 Lessons Learned for your 150th episode. Congratulations. You're making the world a better place by interviewing people and sharing the good stuff. Thank you for having me on the show, and I wish you and all the listener to get better and better, because that's what's life all about.
Congrats to Robert and 10 Lessons Learned. My top lesson, which I continue to share with as many people as possible, make yourself unique. The more unique you are, the more opportunity you'll get.
Thank you to all of our guests today for sharing their wisdom. I think we certainly learned a lot here. And if you really like that, then you should really check out some more episodes, because there's a lot more wisdom where that came from. This is a great opportunity where we were able to get the whole team together and to hear everything that they had to say. But if you check out each episode, they always have great interactions with the guests, and you'll learn so much. With that being said, thank you, everyone. Thank you to our guests, and we look forward to having many more episodes. But for now, thanks for joining us for our 150th.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Skiktaus, come do. Ananop Chigik Jacob Butler. First of all, let me say congratulations on your 150th episode. That's a really awesome milestone, and I'm glad to see that you guys are successful and you're continuing in the interviews and the podcast that you started a few years ago. And for me, I actually had the opportunity to be on one of those podcasts and do an interview, and I'm really grateful for that opportunity, because I actually use it myself. I reflect on the interview that I gave, and I like to listen to what I believed in at the time and the principles that I carried within me. And today, I'm a council member for my community. We make decisions every day that impacts our community for the good or for the bad, not just today, but all the generations to come. And so I actually reflect on who I am as a person, not only who I am now, but who I was then. And hopefully, for me, I hope that I'm the same person, because the principles that I came into this position are reflected in that interview that I gave those years back. And I try to adhere to that. And I also try to do a lot of reflection to say, am I doing the right thing? Did I make the right decision? Am I still adhering to the beliefs that the people saw in me that placed me in the position that I'm in today? And so having the interview there and accessible to me is something that I really am thankful for. I've also had the pleasure to listen to other people and listen to their insight and take from those things where I can use here in this position. And so thank you for that. Thank you for the work that you've done, and congratulations again. I appreciate the opportunity to share my story, the opportunity to listen to others. And I look forward to the many years to come of other influential people and the advice that can come from those interviews and the lessons that can be learned from them. There. See you again.